Welcome to this edition of the High Strangeness Factor, copyrighted on the Paranormal UK radio network. I'm your host, Steve Ward. On the High Strangeness Factor, we explore all aspects of the paranormal and the unexplained, from the past to the present, and also different areas of the unknown, such as UFOs, cryptids, and psychic phenomena. We listen to what witnesses report without rejecting their testimony because it may not fit an accepted frame of reference. We also look for patterns and parallels that may exist from the past to the present and between what we think of as different aspects of the paranormal. And first, I want to introduce my returning co host, Brandi. Welcome back to the High Strangeness Factor.
Thank you so much. Thanks for asking me back.
And, you know, I what I wanted to do, and it wouldn't have been that feasible, but I had in mind, of course, you and I are veterans of the Van Meter Festival and the Van Meter Visitor Festival, which takes place the last weekend in September every year to commemorate, as Chad Lewis would tell us, the Week of Terror. And of course, Chad Lewis, Kevin Nelson, and Noah Voss wrote the book, The Van Meter Visitor, talking about a strange winged cryptid that was seen in 1903 in Van Meter, which is just west of Des Moines. And so I would have also liked to have had a couple other friends of ours on, Lori Bass and Zelia Edgar. Zelia and I have spoken there as well as our upcoming guest, and so it would have been a little bit too crowded, I think, but still it would have been nice to have a big sort of a homecoming for Van Meter, and I
That's
think
right.
we're all really anxious to go back this year after having to skip last year.
Oh, definitely.
So anyway, what I want to do is we'll talk about that more later with our guest. But let me, without much further ado, you know what? I was going to ask you. I should have asked you ahead of time. But I know you're always reading interesting things. Is there anything in particular right now that you're deep into that you're really enjoying?
Well, I just read Jenny Randall's book, the Mind Monsters book, um, kind of about sort of the tulpa almost scenario where people's own consciousness might be creating these real entities. It was really interesting, and she had a lot of good points.
And what was the book again?
It was Mind Monsters
Oh, of
by Jenny
course. Yes,
Randall.
Jenny Randall is one
Hmm.
of our favorite authors. And
Yes.
there's a slim chance I'll get to have her on one time, but I'll have to get with Alan Godfrey again. Okay. Well, without any further ado, let me introduce our guest. Nash Hoover is co host and co creator of the web series Chasing Legends, and he has been researching cryptids and the unexplained ever since he was very young. With a knack for adventure and a passion for exploration, he isn't afraid to push the limits of himself or his team to find the truth. Nash, welcome to the High Strangeness Factor.
Hi, thank you for having me.
And we I've seen you at the Van Meter Visitor Festival, but we haven't really crossed paths yet. So we'll definitely have to do that this year. And
Absolutely.
and you are speaking there this year, correct?
Yes.
And what do you have a topic at this point, or
Yeah, I'm going to be speaking about various cryptids from across the world.
okay? And you have actually traveled across the world with your web series, which is called Chasing Legends.
Yeah, we went to Ireland. That's about as far as we've been so far. But yeah, that's definitely the plan is to take this all over the world.
Well, that's pretty cool. I did some traveling through Europe back in well, as Chad Lewis would say, my buddy Chad, and of course we all know Chad Lewis, who takes that gives us that tour of the Week of Terror. He does a lot of old guy jokes, and I'm not and it's not that I'm writing them down and keeping track, but maybe I should. But back in '73, I did some backpacking throughout Europe, and I spent some time in Ireland. I never got to Northern Ireland, but there was still a lot of trouble up there, I guess. But I wasn't. I went to some areas that where leprechauns were supposed to roam, I guess. And when you looked at some of these forests, I mean, they're just magical with all the moss and the old growth forest and everything. It's pretty wild. What What did you what you're looking for leprechauns there, or were you going with the folklore there?
We were actually there looking for it's kind of like a Celtic goblin myth called the puka.
Oh, okay.
So that's what we were looking into while we were there.
What area of Ireland did you go to look for it?
We were in the what the heck were the mountains called? The mountain range just south of Dublin.
Okay.
I can't remember the top of my head.
And so
But
did you interview a lot of the locals, or were you able to talk to them about some of the legends of the area?
we really didn't speak to any locals. I wish we would have done more of that. We spoke with a lady named Helena Byrne, kind of a folklorist in the Dublin area, and she had a lot of cool stories about different things, and kind of had some personal input. And when it came to like the Puka legend, and so it was really nice to talk to her and kind of get an idea of kind of what we were looking for and where we should kind of like focus the efforts and such.
Did she seem to think there was some real substance to it, or is it strictly a bunch of tall tales in her
Yeah,
mind?
she was pretty heavy on the it's just kind of a good folk tale, which is kind of where we ended our conclusion with the overall case. It was just kind of a I mean, a lot of the Irish myths or a lot of the Irish cryptids and Irish legends and stuff like that are very like pretty heavily rooted in folklore. So it's pretty hard to kind of create any sort of physical sighting out of a lot of these, which is unfortunate.
How
Um,
far back did that legend go, Nash? I mean, is that a recent thing or is it?
No, it's been around. Because
I
I know we kind of came across a lot of stories about it, and it's kind of it almost kind of has like that boogeyman vibe to it, where it's almost kind of
Mm.
used as like a kind of a creative explanation to a lot of things. You know, like their whole thing was like uh, Helena Byron, who we interviewed, she kind of grew up being told that you couldn't eat wild berries past a certain date because the puka would turn them bad, which in reality it's just they're out of season, they're not ripe anymore, they're just have just gone naturally bad. And there's other stories where if you were walking home from the pub drunk and you passed out or fell over, it was the puka that had pushed you over. It was stuff like that. It was kind of just like that kind of fun little explanation for very common things.
Okay.
that's pretty cool. I've got a new excuse.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, she won't believe that either. Okay. It seems to me that there was a time when I was collecting all kinds of stories about various mythical creatures, and it seems to me that the puka is it possible that it's not just in Ireland, but it's one of these things that goes throughout Europe?
It's possible. It could be one of those things that kind of takes different names and such. But
Right.
we, from the research that we found, it seemed like that one kind of more specifically was tailored to kind of Celtic history and Ireland.
Okay. Um, did have you researched other types of I don't know what to call them, little people, goblins, trolls, leprechauns, whether abroad or in the U.S.
Yeah, we in our season one of Chasing Legends that we just released back in February, we did an episode on the Pukwudgie out in Massachusetts.
Ah, yes, and that's in fact, I wasn't able to watch the whole thing, but I watched a good part of the Chasing Legends episode you did on that. Let's talk about the Pugwudgie in just a second, but first let's go back. Tell us how did you become interested in doing this kind of thing, or even before creating the YouTube channel? What was it in your childhood, I guess? Were you an experiencer, or were you just fascinated by these topics?
I was just fascinated by it. I wish, and I tell this story a lot. And I wish that it would have been like, I had seen something that kind of promoted this, but it was just kind of a fascination. I remember coming across, I was probably in second or third grade. This was probably 2002, 2003.
You were in second grade in 2002.
Yeah, I'm 27.
Yes. This is when we need Chad to come in to do a second guy joke. But go ahead.
But yeah, I don't remember specifically like what kind of like attracted me to start looking into Bigfoot. I think it was kind of just like probably came across a story or came across a book or something on it that kind of intrigued me, and from there I kind of started researching Bigfoot stuff more, and it was kind of more specifically like the Patterson Gimlin film, and like that sighting and the Bigfoot sightings and that, like the Pacific Northwest. And then from there it kind of I learned about Loch Ness and started researching that, and I was like, okay, cool, here's another one. And and then I got into UFOs, and I'm like, what the heck are these things? Like they're it was kind of one of those things where it was like, these things shouldn't be here, but people are seeing them.
Right.
And I was this was back before like the internet was kind of to a point where you could just kind of look up whatever you wanted. I do remember doing minimal kind of internet searching, but it was, like I said, it wasn't like you weren't going to get tons of articles like you would now. So I would check out books from our school library on the subject, and it got to the point where I was checking out so many so frequently that the school nurse would find books and just set them aside for me.
Oh, great!
Or she would order in books specifically on the topic for me specifically to read.
Wow!
So that for me was kind of like, kind of where I started kind of the inception of my research career. And then from there, shows like Monster Quest came out, and then Destination Truth and other kind of things like that kind of broadened my perspective on some of these cases, and kind of showed me that it goes well beyond just these few cryptids across the world. Like there's tons all over the place. Different cultures have different iterations of the same thing. Pretty much every culture in the world has a Bigfoot legend, or a lake monster, or any sort of thing. So and then when I got into like high school, I started getting into to filmmaking and wanting to make movies and this and that. And then 2013, I kind of was like, well, what if I take these two interests of mine, these two hobbies of mine, and put them together? And I was talking with a fellow researcher of mine, Caitlin Keeley, who actually co-created the show with me. And we had kind of always kicked around, what if we were to make a show, kind of what it would be like. So we kind of put our heads together and came up with a concept, and 8 years later, this is where we're at.
So how old were you when you started this?
2013, I was
just approximately
18.
18. Okay. Jeez.
Oh my gosh.
I know.
Almost 19.
Well, Brandi's only 28. That's right, Brandi?
Right.
Yes.
Right.
But I think you should come clean. I think by now you're at least 28 and a half. Okay, enough of that.
Let's move on.
That's really cool too. Oh, go ahead, Brandi.
In while you were getting interested in this as a kid, Nash, did anybody ever tell you that they encountered something? Like, did anybody ever bring it like close to you like that, where they, you really were interested in this happening to somebody that you knew?
No, I never had that.
Okay.
It was kind of one of those things where I kind of had to do it pretty privately for a long time, just because it was still pretty taboo. It was still a pretty taboo subject, and there weren't as many people out there kind of doing this stuff as there are now. Where now it's kind of more, it's pretty welcomed to
Sure.
get into this field. It's a lot easier now to
Right.
kind of get into this stuff. So yeah, for me, it was kind of more of something I did pretty privately until probably 10 or so years ago.
Okay.
You didn't have any friends at the time when you first started that were into this where you could start a club or share ideas with?
I had friends that were into like the ghost side of things. So
Okay.
I had friends in high school that we would kind of go and do ghost hunting and stuff to that together. But definitely didn't have anybody that was kind of willing to go sit in the woods and look for something that could potentially hunt us back. Uh, so yeah, it
See, I
took me a
wonder
while
why.
to it took me a while to find people that were willing and crazy enough to do that with me.
Did you ever see the what was it, the Beast of Boggy Creek?
I think so. It's
Okay.
been a while.
I just wonder because I know that I didn't see it until the last couple of years. I finally ordered it on Amazon. It came out in the early 70s, and that was a time when I didn't hit drive-ins that much, and that's kind of where it went. And just so many people were well-known people were intrigued by this, and that kind of got them started. So I'm just curious as if you ever saw that. But it's it's kind of fun, but man, is it cheesy by today's standards. But and my path was a little bit like yours. I never had any really experiences at all when I was a kid. I've had maybe one or two strange things happen in all the time I've been into this. But I was intrigued by the books of Frank Edwards, who wrote. I think you can still get them, but he wrote several anthologies. He was a newsman, and he was a colleague of oh, come on, the NICAP guy, Donald Kehoe, Major Donald Kehoe. And he wrote a book, a famous book called Flying Saucers Serious Business. But before that, he wrote several anthologies like Stranger Than Science, Strangest of All. And that's where I learned about, there was a chapter in one of them that was called The Monster Apes of Oregon, which really was about Bigfoot in the Northwest. And he wrote about the Flatwoods Monster and the Kelly Hopkinsville Goblin. So that's where I first learned about that. And then it was there was a wave of UFO sightings when I was in junior high in the mid '60s, and in the following November. One of the first sightings of the Mothman showed up. So, by the way, I should ask, is the Mothman anything you've gone into, or maybe an area you might check out in one of your YouTube videos?
I would. We've all kind of talked about it. I know. I definitely want to get down there and just go to Point Pleasant and go to the museum and just kind of like see everything. As far as featuring an episode, it's kind of been something that we've been kind of back and forth on. Where one side of it we'd be like, yeah, it'd be cool, but the other side of it, it's like it's one of those ones that's been done so many times that it's like, would we really be adding anything that hasn't been explored to it? So I don't know. It's like I said, it's one of those ones that's always been up in the air. It's definitely one that it interests all of us. So I'm not gonna say no, but it's as of right now, possibly not.
I go down there often with a group of people. We meet down there, and I know a lot of the people there. Also, I'm very much a part of the Mothman Festival, which happens the weekend right before the Van Meter Visitor Festival, every third weekend in September. And but sometime if you want to go down there, I can alert some of the gang, and we could meet you down there and show you around a little bit, and show you some of the ropes. But Brandi went down there a couple of years ago now, I guess, and
Okay.
it was a small gathering with the para expedition people. And Brandi, tell us about your experience down there. It was your first time there, right?
It was, and it was so much different than I thought it would be. Just hearing the stories about it, the area was a lot different than I thought it would be. It just seemed, it. I know this sounds strange, but it seemed like the closer I got to Point Pleasant, the more the geography like started caving in on you. It almost seemed like it was suffocating you by the time you got there, which is a strange way of explaining it, I know, but that's kind of the feeling that I got by being there. And what was really neat about the Para Expeditions group was that they were sort of combining like psychic and ghostly, stuff with the
Right.
Mothman sightings. So they were kind of, playing one off the other and seeing maybe how are these things related and what do they have to do with each other. So that was kind of a different take on everything too. So
Yeah, their primary focus was kind of ghost hunting, but they wanted to do something a little different, and so we did the. I gave a small talk at the amphitheater, and the in Nash the whole if you when you if you film it, uh, I think people will be carried away by the in Point Pleasant they've got the flood wall with all the historic paintings on it. Uh, there's a great deal of history there. There's the mountains, and Brandi, when you said things were kind of caving in on you, there's a part, I cut across Ohio from southern Michigan to go there. There's a part where all of a sudden it's like the land buckles because the mountains start forming before you get to the
yeah,
Ohio, and so everything changes. But it'd be a fascinating area. Even if you don't think you can find a different take on it, probably just being there and your interaction with it would
you
you
just
would get something unique.
hmm
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely be down to go. I mean, I'll go anywhere. I don't necessarily have to. I don't do this specifically for to wrap a production around it. Like I'll go anywhere just to research things. So yeah, I would love to just go. I think it would be a lot of fun.
Well, I'd like to say that in just watching your videos, Nash, I noticed that you have a different take on most of the things that you videoed, just because instead of going out there to prove that something was there, you and your team kind of went out there to see what was there. And if you were going to disprove whatever the legend was because that's what you observed, then that was the outcome. You didn't go out there with the intent to prove something. And I think that in itself is a different take on, most of the investigations that people do.
Yeah, we've always kind of had that, not necessarily could it be real or couldn't it be real. We always had that mindset of, could it exist? Is it, and then kind of looking into other explanations and
Mm-hmm.
seeing if we can pretty much take all of the evidence that we've gathered from sighting reports and, and firsthand accounts and then just putting ourselves out there. And then if we have some more things happen, but we're able to explain it, then we kind of look at it, okay, could it possibly be this or this, or this or that? Yeah, I never use the term debunking. We definitely go at everything with a pretty kind of open mindset, and we look at everything objectively,
Right.
no matter kind of how we personally feel about the cases. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something I would consider. I just kind of have to look into some more of the information that's there, and like I said, we'll shoot everything. We'll film an episode on anything as long as there is, a good story to tell and people to help tell it.
That's a good point about finding out what people are reporting and telling you what's there. I just spoke a few weeks ago, finally, at a Bigfoot conference in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and had been because of all the stuff going on, it had been forever since I had spoken before an audience, and they had. There was a Bigfoot conference, but Nash, they had it divided. They had the normal Bigfooters that believe Bigfoot is a undocumented flesh and blood creature, and then they had the woo room, as in WOO, at which I'm afraid I've been seduced by the dark side, and I spoke in the woo room. Now I told everybody that this is actually the redheaded stepchild room, but which they got a kick out of. And it was funny because it sounded like a good idea at first, but then when you look at some of the high power speakers that were up against us, there were a group of ladies before me that are called the She Squatchers.
Yeah, I know
And
them.
okay, you know them, nice group of ladies. They were speaking opposite Ken Gerhard. but still they had a good group in there. But then I was a little concerned because I was speaking opposite Adam Davies, right? So I told Adam Davies, I said, I'm going to confess, Adam, I've been telling everybody that you had been robbing orphanages of their money so that they would come to my talk instead of yours. But he got a good belly laugh out of that one. But fortunately, I had a decent audience, and uh, but it was kind of fun. But speaking of that. It seems to me that with some of the cryptids people encounter, Linda Godfrey has encountered some of the high strangeness connected with it. Do you have any feeling from your investigations if these things are, if they're real, if they're strictly hidden animals, or if they're in some cases, is there something that could call high strangeness connected with them?
Depending on what it is. Most of the stuff we go after, we go at it strictly as, okay, this is a physical animal, or it's something, uh, completely made up, or it's misidentified, whatever. But there are certain times where we'll kind of look into the things that kind of bridge that gap. Example, the Pukwudgie, the Rougarou, Devil's Punch Bowl in Wisconsin, things of that nature we will definitely tackle, but we kind of go at it, we tread pretty lightly with the stuff, and we kind of almost poke fun at the idea that it could be something, of high strangeness, until, unless we see evidence that it is something that we can't explain, no matter how hard we try.
But if you listen to the individuals and what their experience is, I mean, even if it's a
Oh
little
yeah,
bit odd,
absolutely.
right?
I mean,
Okay.
it doesn't matter how far-fetched, some of these reports might be. If someone's willing to talk to us, we're gonna listen.
Right.
You know, it it doesn't, like I said, it doesn't matter. Like I'm never not gonna speak to somebody because they said that Bigfoot, shape shifted and, materialized inside their, cabin and then just vanished or something like that. I'm never not gonna not listen to that person. I might not fully believe them, but I'm still gonna hear them out and take what they are claiming they experienced very seriously, and still, include it in our evidence and research.
Right.
Have you?
Go ahead,
Oh, go
Brady.
ahead. No, go ahead.
But for what it's worth, if you look at some of the research that Stan Gordon did in 73, 74 in southwestern Pennsylvania, there was a wave of really strange Bigfoot reports. I mean, this one woman heard a commotion out on her porch, sees something that she doesn't know what a Bigfoot is. She called it a big gorilla. She shoots this thing point blank, and it disappeared in a hail of sparks. Well, that wasn't the only experience like that. There was a really high strangeness, a connection with strange lights in the sky. And as you know, Ron Moorhead started out in the Sierra Nevadas, and he got those great recordings of Bigfoot, believing that it was a flesh and blood animal, but then had so many strange experiences with batteries dying and strange lights that he's, I think, kind of been seduced to the dark side. He wrote Quantum Bigfoot. And lastly, Tom Powell was another one that started out thinking that it was merely a flesh and blood animal. But he mentioned in one of his books that when he talked to people that have seen Bigfoot but had some kind of it was attached to some kind of very high strangeness experiences attached to it, that they were relieved to find out that other people had experienced it. So they figured, well, I'm not crazy. But anyway, I like the idea of listening to the reports and then perhaps finding patterns. Brandy, you were going to say something?
Well, I was just going to ask Nash if, when he's listened to these reports, if he kind of noticed any similar characteristics between the people reporting them. Like, were there any common denominators between the people? Maybe something, I don't know, as mundane as their occupation, or something like that. Like, was there anything that kind of linked all the people making these various reports together?
So when we did our Mogollon Monster episode in Arizona, that was a Bigfoot one, and one of the guys that we interviewed was a BFRO member. And this is a guy that, has been in the BFRO for a number of years, and he was kind of on the woo side of things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he said he definitely started out on the, flesh and blood animal, but he linked up with these other guys that we also interviewed in the episode, and they were having some very strange things happening out in the woods where they would camp, and that kind of changed their kind of perspective on it. I don't know. It's a weird thing. I mean, I don't know. It's like, I mean, you just kind of have to, like most things in this field, you just kind of take it with a grain of salt. It's one of those things because we don't know. Like, we don't know what Bigfoot is because, we've never had a body. We've never been able to study them scientifically. I mean, if we would, a lot of us would be out of the job.
That's right.
It's hard to say definitively, okay, this is a flesh and blood animal and it can't be anything else when we don't know. But to me, I don't know. I just feel like it would make more sense for it to be a flesh and blood animal, but there are a lot of just really weird, more specifically on the Bigfoot side of things, there's just so many things that just don't make sense. And especially when you're getting people from different parts of the country almost explaining the similar things happening where, you shoot them and they just kind of vanish.
Right.
You kind of have to start thinking, okay, unless it's literally is just one of those things where someone's making up a story that they heard and making up their own kind of version of it, that's possible too. But when you get people that don't look into this stuff and know that other people are having these same things happening, you kind of have to stop and look at it a little bit more seriously.
Right, it's always been the problem with even the UFO side. As a student of John Keel, he discovered that he started to reject the extraterrestrial hypothesis and thought these were more something natural condition of the planet. But it's interesting you said that you start to find that's the key, I think, is finding patterns. Even though people are telling you some pretty strange stuff, it's great to keep a record of it. And you got people that don't know each other that are spread out geographically having the same experiences. When you talked about being out of a job, I was wearing one of my 50 Mothman T-shirts, Mothman Search Team, up northern Michigan, and some smart ass said, "Well, have you caught him yet?" And I said, "No. If we catch him, I'll be out of a job." And at least I got a chuckle out of him. But what Brandi brings up is something, again, as a student of Keel. Keel had a catchphrase where, and I've said it 100 times on the show, but he said, ask the experiencer essentially what they had for breakfast. And what he meant was find out all about them. Because what he found was that people that were seeing creatures or having a UFO experience, that oftentimes they were having experiences all their life, and they were having ghostly experiences, strange electrical interference in their house. They might see orbs, they might see shadow people. And I have interviewed people that have had a variety of that stuff happening, and if I hadn't been introduced to, I guess I could call it the Keel method, I would have been frozen back in the 60s just wondering about the little green men jumping out of the spaceships. And, I hope you get a breakthrough with your missing time so we can find out what they did to you. So I've always found that very interesting. Let me do a brief intermission here. You are listening to the High Strangeness Factor, copyrighted on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. I am Steve Ward. And today, Brandi and I are talking to Nash Hoover about chasing legends and his adventures around the globe. So we started talking a little bit about the Pugwudgies. And I know you interviewed Paul Eno, who lives out that way. And the Pugwudgies are one of the areas they're supposed to be in is the Freetown State Forest, the Bridgewater Triangle. What was that experience like?
Yeah, that is such a weird area. I mean, it's like there's just so much that happens out there, like aside from just the Pugwudgie stuff. I mean, you've got UFOs and Bigfoot sightings and big strange winged creatures and ghostly things happening. And
it's one of those classic high strangeness areas like Point Pleasant, like the Skinwalker Ranch, and maybe you have some in Minnesota as well. But go ahead.
Yeah, so it was almost like too much. Like it was just like there was like so many things that you I mean, we could have been there for a week and barely scratched the surface into everything that was going on out there. And it was a cool. It was just it's just such a cool area. I mean, and it's and we kind of touched on some of the the famous mob murders and
Yeah.
other actual like known criminal activities that have happened out in the Freetown State Forest. And um,
Don't they find bodies dumped out there?
yeah,
Now this
Sounds
is
it's
this is
fabulous.
I
this
don't
is
know
Brandy's
how
expertise right here.
I don't know how much anymore, but I know like there was a time where it was pretty frequent. They
That
were finding they were finding like dead babies out there, and uh, very very clear mob killings out there. There have been a lot of strange suicides, um, and a lot of like the suicides specifically have kind of gone in hand with like the Pukwudgie stuff. And
hmm,
uh, there's an area out there called the Assonet Ledge that there have been a lot of strange suicides that have happened there, and that's kind of one of the kind of like the folk tales is that that's the Pukwudgies, leading these people to their deaths and kind of tricking them and whatever. And yeah, it's just such a strange dark area.
I know you guys were out there at night with what you had. Did you have night vision?
Yes.
Okay, so what was that like? I mean, there's one part where you're talking about how dark it is.
It I mean, there was nothing out there. I mean, we didn't there was like no evidence of animal life even. Like it was just like it was just completely dead. Like we heard things in the distance, but we never came across anything uh at all really. I mean, it was beginning of March of 2020. It had snowed. It was cold.
Right.
So I'm sure nothing was really out walking around, like us.
Well, didn't Paul Eno talk about that they might have captured, they cut a couple photographs of something, and they weren't really sure what it was, but they might have actually caught photographs of one of them.
Yeah, he took some pictures in the area that we interviewed him. A few I don't remember when. Um, but yeah, I mean, there's definitely something in them. It's kind of one of those things where you have to zoom in on it and to really kind of see what it is. But there's definitely something there that doesn't uh, look natural, and it doesn't fit the colors of the rest of the kind of fauna in front and behind it.
Well, there was an interesting podcast I listened to years ago, and I gave a copy of it to Brandy, and it was Ghost Village Radio under the umbrella of Ghost something with Jeff Ballinger. He's out that way. And
Yep.
oh, by the way, Tim Wiseman. Uh, I know I'm jumping around. He did a show called Spooky South Coast, and I remember one night he had a bunch of people, he was doing it live. He had a bunch of people out all over the Freetown State Forest, kind of checking out everything, including a part of the road where you said that they cover everything. I mean, have everything there. There's some kind of a hitchhiker ghost, I think, also that people supposedly pick up and then they disappear on them. But so that was kind of fun. But this particular show, Ghost Village, was Ron Kolick and Maureen Wood, and they would go different haunted places, and she was a psychic and he just had his tape recorder, and they would talk about what was going on. Well, this one particular night they're out there with a big group of people, Jeff Belanger and Chris Belzano, who has written a couple of books on the Freetown State Forest, and they thought they saw something, and I think it was night, but they took a photograph and they're looking at the photograph. You can't see anything visually, obviously, it's just radio. And they saw some kind of a creepy looking face. And But then this Marine Wood supposedly was kind of possessed by something. I'd heard by other shows she was on, and she was a medium and would often become sort of would channel or even become a little bit possessed by some of the alleged entities in the dwelling or the house or whatever. But she starts making this horrible noise like you might hear in the movie The Exorcist, and kind of gagging and spitting and everything. And of course, Ron Kolek, he comes from a Roman Catholic perspective, so he's doing his, he's got his holy cross and his holy water, and he's doing the whatever incantation it is. But it was just with the other people around there, the credible people. It seemed like they had a real experience there. Now, was there really some kind of an entity or spirit that had possessed her, or was it uh, something where it was just imagination? I don't know, but if I were in your shoes out in that dark
Oh
forest,
my
I think I'd
gosh.
be a little nervous.
For sure.
But yeah, but that's a really intriguing one. Now let's see. Let's well, boy, there's so many ways we can go. Is there before I go on? Is there anything in particular direction you'd like to go right now, Nash?
I'm open to whatever.
Okay, just didn't want you to miss an opportunity for something. Some of the you mentioned Loch Ness. Did you ever get to Scotland and Loch Ness?
I have not yet. No,
Okay,
unfortunately.
I was
Yeah,
there
he
during
said
that.
yes.
Yeah, yeah, there you go. I was there in '73, and I had just read F.W. Holliday's book called The Great Orm of Loch Ness, and it was ORM, which is a kind of an ancient word for worm. And at that time, he thought Nessie was the plesiosaur scenario didn't make any sense. So he thought it was more of something like an oversized mollusk. But then he started having all kinds of high strangeness experience, and so did other people. And that's a long story I won't get into. But the one thing I will mention is he went to Ireland to check out some of these other lakes where a very similar type of creature was reported. But the thing is, in some of these lakes are as big as a football field and maybe 20 or 30 feet deep. Yet you would have several credible sightings by several people, even some of these things coming up on land. So that's another one of those things where you have this paradox of credible people seeing essentially the same thing and people seeing the same thing in different lakes all over the place. Yet, how can it be? How can there be a colony of these things in a lake that small? So that's something that has always kind of bothered me. What about Brandy? Before I go on, was there any particular uh, any investigations or any direction you'd like to go?
Well, since you brought up the lake monsters, maybe if Nash has um, anything he wants to tell us about any investigations he did, maybe with Champ or Peppy,
Oh,
how those
that's a good idea.
might have gone. Yeah.
Yes. So,
Okay, we hit a good one.
Uh-oh.
so with season one, we did an episode on Champ. We knew we wanted to do a Lake Monster episode, and that was kind of like the top of the list. Like, okay, we've researched this one for a long time. Like, let's get out there, like, and see the lake in person. And it completely blew my mind. It, like, I grew up, watching the Monster Quest episode on it and researching it, from Minnesota. And then to actually like get to Vermont and set foot on Lake Champlain, it's like, okay, this there could easily be, several creatures living in this lake and
Right.
could do so, totally without being found.
Yeah, that one
Why
doesn't
did
have
And
a problem of being a small lake that can't house enough fish to feed a population of those things.
oh yeah, no.
Oh,
There's plenty of space for anything out
okay.
there. I mean, whales could live in this lake and I
Holy
wouldn't be
cow.
surprised. Like,
So,
but yeah, I mean, it was like the more of the lake that we saw, the more it just kind of like hit me like there's something here. Like this has to be, like, out of all the cases I've researched aside from like Mogollon Monster, like Champ is the one that, like, without a doubt has to be real. Like there's something out there. And everywhere we went, anybody we talked to, they either had a story or they knew somebody that had a sighting. Um, no matter where we went, where we talked to, no matter what restaurant we went to, what gas station we went to, we brought it up. Somebody somebody either personally saw it or knew somebody that had seen it. And especially then when we got out on the lake and we're hitting spots that are, like 300 plus feet deep,
Right.
Oh
and
God.
there's, like, there's an underwater mountain range in Lake Champlain that hasn't been explored that is, probably has several cave systems in it that could, and we're talking with very, very, very experienced, one of the guys we interviewed was a very, a, a scuba veteran. Like, he dives the lake all the time, knows that lake like the back of his hand, and he said that he saw something that he does not know what it was. Like, it did not fit any of the categories of things that he would kind of classify as a sighting from different people. It wasn't it wasn't a boat wake, it wasn't a log, like it was something alive and moving, and you know breached the surface and went down. And we spoke with a couple that had literally had a sighting like days before we went there,
Oh, that's cool.
and there was really good. I mean, it was shot in a cell phone and zoomed in, so it wasn't like the best, but I mean, you could see something was there and moving pretty quickly across the lake.
But the
Yeah,
locals know what they're looking at, so they know when it's something anomalous.
that's what I mean. Like,
Yeah.
these are people that have lived on the lake their entire lives. Like, they're not gonna see see something, like an otter or something moving across the lake and be like, okay, there's
Right.
Champ. They're gonna know. They're gonna know what's out there.
Right. Wow. You didn't get in the water, did you?
We didn't get physically in the water, but we
Okay.
got we kayaked on the lake, which was
Oh my God.
even as dumb. It's well, we had to get out there. We had to do we had to do our investigation, and it was not easy.
Yeah, it's okay, Brandi. Champ does not eat kayaks because of the spray they use to preserve the wood,
Yeah.
or maybe they're plastic. I don't know. But when I was at I had read this book by Holliday, The Great Orm of Loch Ness, and it was riveting, even though he changed his views later. But he categorized there were certain sightings where people saw this thing on land back in 32 or 33. This a retired businessman from Edinburgh, is driving along, and this thing, and it wasn't really on feet. It was more like a giant worm kind of shuffling along, and then just passes them and goes into the lake. And there's a few other sightings like that. So when I was out there looking at the lake, I was also looking over my shoulder just in case this thing showed up on the road. But did you ever I don't think I've ever come across any land sightings of Champ, but maybe they do have them. I haven't really looked at it.
Yeah, there are. I wouldn't. Yeah, there are sightings. Not necessarily on land, but there's like kind of marshy, very shallow
Right.
marshy areas that they kind of see weird. They'll come out and see weird disturbances, or like something had obviously something large had swam through, and like everything would be broken apart. I mean, one of the main theories is that it's a large turtle, which if you look at a lot of the sightings and stuff like that, it kind of would make sense. It kind of has that versus like the plesiosaur aspect of it. I mean, I know there's like the Sandra Mancy photo, which is very obviously like looks like your classic plesiosaur. But a lot of like the really good like video footage that we've come across, it definitely looks like something pretty round back, pretty round shell like back, and then kind of like a longer, or like kind of a shorter head and neck.
Are there any photographs or sightings of them with several humps like Nessie, or is it mostly
I
just the one hump?
I'm sure there are. I'm
Okay.
trying to think if I'm sure I've seen them.
Because
I'm
that's
sure
a
they exist.
characteristic of Nessie, and then Morag, Morag and Loch Morar, with that's a smaller loch.
Yep.
He has shown up a few times. Um, but also, I met Holiday. His second book was The Dragon and the Disc, and that's where it gets into some really high strangeness. And then in the Goblin universe, it just goes off the chart. But even with Dr. Donald Omond trying to exorcise Nessie from the loch, but that's another story. Um, but uh, there have been other reports, but several reports in the lock, and this is Nick Redfern wrote a really great book called Nessie, where he goes over the research of Holliday and so many other people. It's very thorough, and he talks about how people have seen other strange things in there, like it looks something more like a crocodile with tusks. And people have also seen something that just looks like a big giant frog. But what made me think about that is there have been others that have they've come up with all kinds of theories about Nessie being some kind of an eel or a big
Yep.
turtle or so. But
I think the eel theory is kind of like the one that's really kind of taking over in
right.
terms of Loch Ness right now.
Well, here's okay. I'm just going to leave this with a wacky thing. Brandi, you're a fan of Jim Mars. I know you've read some of his books.
Yes, I
Well,
am.
Nick Redfern, I've got to find the source, the actual source, which book he said this. Jim Mars checked with some of the military remote viewing people. And, the military remote viewers checked on, I mean, it was mostly doing, Cold War spy stuff to find
Hmm.
out what the commies were doing, right? Well, they would do things like UFOs sometimes or Bigfoot. Well, they actually did remote view Nessie. And according to Mars, they would see something that looked a little bit like a plesiosaur, and it seemed like a real physical animal, but then it would disappear. It would vanish, not just
Hmm.
hide. So, for whatever that's worth, that's what the remote viewers were getting. But what about was it Lake Pepin?
Like Pepin.
Yeah.
And is that Pepe?
Yes, that is Pepe.
Okay,
So
so
it's Chad and Kevin and Noah also wrote a book on this one.
I know, but yeah, we're not gonna give Chad any he's already how many books does he have? Much money is he rolling in? His cigars, his Rolls Royce, and all he can do is make fun of old guys. So I actually
Hey,
have it.
he makes fun of me too.
And young. Oh my
anytime either
God.
of us are somewhere, we always have to take a picture and send it to one another to rub it in.
Yes, but you and I can actually probably plan something this year at Van Meter. Tell us about. Yeah, I know. I actually do have Chad's book, and he's also got a book on lake monsters of Wisconsin, I think. But that's an interesting thing, though. These stories of lake monsters are everywhere, not just the classic ones in Scotland, Ireland, and so forth, but it's almost like you're dealing with a water spirit or something like that, or there's something as part of the condition, or just a natural condition of the planet where people see these things. Maybe they aren't all flesh and blood. Maybe they are apparitions. I don't know. But it's just very curious that so many of these lakes uh, have these supposedly have these critters in them. Is it something? Are we wired that way where we just are going to see these things, whether they're there or not? I don't know. How big is Lake Pepin?
I mean, Lake Pepin geographically is similar to the size of Loch Ness. It's just not anywhere near as deep,
Okay.
which is kind of like the toss up because I think the max depth of Pepin is like 80 feet maybe, whereas Loch
Okay.
Ness is like in the 700s.
Right. I think there's some places where it's supposed to get, well, not quite 1,000 maybe, but there might be a few little places. Plus, I don't know all about Lake Pepin, but Loch Ness is you can barely see that would creep me out to
Hmm.
be a diver in Loch Ness where you can barely see so many
Oh my
people
God,
behind you.
it's.
I wouldn't. I just wouldn't do it. The worst. I jumped into a fjord in Norway once, in my skivvies, and that's about it. So and then later on, I find out that the same exorcist that supposedly exorcised Nessie, he went to the fjord of trolls, where some more of these creatures are supposed to live, and he supposedly exorcised some from there too. This Dr. Orman is an interesting guy because he saw his first Nessie type creature in Loch Long on sort of the west side of Scotland, I think, and so. Anyway, that's whether it's there's any substance to it or not. He's a really interesting character, and he got together with F.W. Holliday, and they exorcised Loch Ness. They went to the four corners of the loch, and then they went into the center, and they did an exorcism, and some really strange stuff ensued. But again, we won't cover that at this time.
Do you
Uh,
have an exorcist as part of your team, Nash?
No, no, we don't.
Maybe ought to
Yeah,
bring
maybe,
one on.
listen, I could maybe take a correspondence course or something and get up to speed.
Oh.
But anyway,
What?
tell
Let
tell
me ask, what did Peppy look like? What is Peppy? Is it like a plesiosaur type?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the sighting reports that we've come across, and there are some pretty good photos out there of something that looks kind of your classic, humps and log neck.
Hmm.
But like I said, the sightings are pretty far in between, and I don't think there's been anything very recently. And like I said, it's not a very deep lake
right.
Yeah.
that something would be able to kind of live in. I mean, there's definitely good sized fish in the lake. So if something like Peppy were to live there, there's definitely a food source.
Right.
It's just one of those things where, I mean, and Lake Pepin is a part of the Mississippi River, so it's very muddy.
Okay.
So something like something could theoretically live there and not be seen, but for how busy Lake Pepin is, I mean, it's in a very beautiful area. Like there's tons of people out on the water all the time, except for the winter. There would be more sightings. It's
Right.
just kind of one of those things.
Well, plus Nick Redfern, well, actually Holiday did too, but Redfern does a really masterful job of debunking the plesiosaur idea because they were air breathers, and he calculates if there's a colony of 20 or 30 of them in order to survive, how many times they would have to surface. Based on what an alligator or a crocodile can stay under for quite a long time, but they figured out how many times they would have to surface, and there would be the potential of like hundreds and hundreds of sightings of this thing popping up, and they're pretty elusive. Tell us about the other people on your team. Who do you go out and explore with?
So currently excuse me. So currently my cousin Michaela is kind of is going to become our co-host moving forward. So she'll be on camera with me. She's been with the project since the very beginning. So she's been in every episode and has been with the project like the whole time. And so we're finally, kind of giving her more of a proper role. I mean, she's always kind of had that role, but we're actually like giving her the title. And then we have Sammy Vernay, who is our director of photography. So he's the one that makes everything look good, does all the camera work. And then we have Jack Kozitsa, who is actually Michaela's boyfriend. He does all of our audio and behind the scenes photography. And it's the four of us right now. With our season one, we had Alexander Pedikov and Eli Watson, who are two guys in the cryptid field. Alex is from New Hampshire. Eli is from California. So we kind of had people from both ends of the country. They're really great guys, very thorough researchers, awesome investigators. And then we had Brian Burninghouse, who was our kind of a second camera operator. Alex, Eli, and Brian have since left the project, so it's just the four of us right now, and we're going to be hiring a couple more people here once we start filming again. That's kind of our core crew, and we kind of handle all of Michaela and I handle all of the, kind of nitty-gritty production planning stuff, as well as being on camera, and then I kind of handle all of the technical production side of physical production side of things to Sammy, and he kind of writes up how we're going to shoot all the episodes and kind of things that he wants to get, that we necessarily need to get to kind of tie everything together. And it's nice. It's a lot of fun. We have,
It's a good production.
Yeah, thank you.
You guys do a great job.
Yep.
We worked very hard to kind of get to this point, and I always laugh kind of looking back at like the very first episode and like to now. It's like it's very clearly night and day.
Tell us which the first episode is so we can go check it out and compare.
It's
or dare you tell us.
The very first episode that's on our channel, the very first video. It's Ghosts of Hell's Tunnel, and I always joke that we're a cryptid show, and our first episode ever was a ghost hunt. And but I mean, when we created this show, we were going to look into both, and then it kind of went into, we're like, screw it, let's just look into cryptids. That's more interesting to us. And
everybody does ghosts, I bet Chad Lewis, that guy does ghosts, a big deal.
Yeah, exactly. And I did not want to be another Chad Lewis. So I mean, but we shot that episode, and that was kind of more of like it was going to be like a test episode. We're like, all right, let's just try our concept out and see if it works. And then like we had stuff happen, so we're like, screw it, let's put it out there. Like, what is there to lose?
Well, the production. I mean, when I first looked at it, I thought, well, it's just well done production, the music and the editing and all that. It's really really good. And I notice you're getting thousands and thousands of hits on these.
Yeah, I check daily or every other day or so, and yeah, there's like more and more. Our Ruger episode, which was like our last episode that we put out, seems to be the one that's getting the most viewed. I think because that's the one that comes up first. Okay. But yeah, I mean, we're consistently getting subscribers. That episode is blowing up, which I'm fine with, because I mean that's probably my favorite in terms of like how it looks out of the four. So I mean, yeah, it's people are digging it.
And where did you go for that one?
Louisiana.
I mentioned to Brandi before the show that I was up in Quebec many years ago, and there were rumors of the loup-garou or whatever they called it up there as well. But as I explained, I had really bad allergies, and I certainly I wasn't really inclined to go cryptid hunting in those days. I certainly wasn't going to do it then. But so what was that? Tell us a little bit about that episode. What was that like?
So that one was a lot of fun. The Ruger actually kind of has some ties to the loup-garou. It's the kind of French,
because of the French influence, right?
Yeah. So that was kind of like the new kind of take on that story. They just they kind of gave it a different name and characteristics and whatnot. But that's kind of where it kind of derives from. But
what is that for people that don't know what that is?
So the Rougarou is supposed to be like a dogman type creature, but it's kind of one of those ones that kind of bridges the gap between physical and spiritual, where a lot of the stories are people that almost get like, if they see it, they kind of get like possessed by it, and then they become one. And it isn't like a werewolf in the traditional sense where you're bound to the full moon. Once you're a Rougarou, you're a Rougarou until I think it's what is it? Yeah, someone, and it's almost like is
it a curse?
You don't necessarily become a Rougarou. Like it's almost like a kind of like that. I'm trying to think of it kind of just like haunts you basically. And okay. I kind of, when we were doing our interview on it, I kind of brought up that it kind of seemed like it was like a physical manifestation of guilt. And the guy we interviewed was like, I had not heard that before, but yeah, that sounds pretty much like what it is. And that was kind of what he was saying, was that if you had this Rougarou following you, it would just not leave you alone, and it would just make your life hell. And you would have to physically cut it. Like you would have to like hurt it and make it bleed for it to go away. So, there was, and there's a few different takes on it. It's, either one of the things is if you know who the Rougarou is, if you meet one, you know who it is, you can't say who it is for a year and a day. Otherwise you become a Rougarou. Like you have to like hold that secret.
Is it something?
And there's just a lot of weird kind of things like that.
Do they sense? Do they have a psychic sense where they see somebody and they know he's the Rougarou? Or I mean, how would they know?
I don't know. He didn't really go that into detail but that was just kind of one of the many stories that he brought up. I mean, this guy, he was born and raised down in New Orleans or Louisiana, South Louisiana. Well, and his, I guess he said that his grandfather, always talked about seeing one, when he was younger. So it's definitely something that and I kind of kicked myself because I wish we would have kind of gone more deeper south, farther south into Louisiana, where a lot of these stories kind of came from.
Right.
Um, but yeah, it was really cool. And like the town of Homa, which is like 45 minutes west of New Orleans, they do a Rougarou festival every year. Um, so we went out to Homa, and they weren't doing the festival, unfortunately, because we were there this last October, so they weren't doing it because of COVID.
Right.
Bummer.
And we kind of just checked it out, and there was a boat captain, Billy Gaston was his name, and he took us out into the swamp and kind of showed us around. And he actually had a Rougarou statue, like a Halloween decoration, basically,
Oh,
that he took out with us, and then we put it out into the swamps and kind of did some kind of fun filming of it, and just kind of saw what this thing is reported to look like, and actually put it out there and to kind of give a visualization of what people are seeing out in the swamps, and then eventually went out and looked for them ourselves. But yeah, the Rougarou was definitely an interesting one. Definitely one that I would like to touch on again someday.
well,
Um,
it's interesting that a lot of these things, we talked about lake monsters being everywhere. Well, the dog man and his cousins are everywhere too. They're not just
yeah.
on Bray Road. So that's interesting. And I have a kind of a weird question. I know that Linda Godfrey said that she discovered that the possible link between the clusters of these dogman sightings and some of the mounds, the effigy mounds in southern Wisconsin. Have you ever explored the mounds at all, or have you ever seen, come across any connection with any of the things you've investigated with some of the ancient mounds in the U.S.?
I have not, but then again, I haven't, I guess, looked into that side of things as
Right.
much. So it's possible. I mean, um, obviously, we like the Pukwudgie stuff. I mean, there's a
Right.
lot of kind of things out there. Champ, I know there's a lot of Native American history around Lake Champlain, and
And of course, so many of them have been leveled by civilization. We don't always know
yeah,
where they were. But
unfortunately.
that's been a really a fascinating area. I thought maybe we would start to wrap things up a little bit by talking about Van Meter. But Brandy, is there any other question you'd like to ask Nash before we move into Van Meter?
Well, I was just curious, I guess, what would be your ultimate investigation? Like, what's the dream that you hope you can do someday?
Mothman, Mothman, Mothman.
There's so many. I mean, I don't know. I want to get to Africa more than anything, just because there's so many cool ones
Ooh.
there that just kind of have such a cool like cultural background. Um, for me, I enjoy researching like the international cryptids just because there's just such a cool like cultural history to them, and it's just so unique. And a lot of them are more like most likely just folk tales, but they're just the way it just kind of like exists in their day-to-day lives
Right.
and in their histories. A lot of them are just so cool. So I know Africa has always been one. Southeast Asia has always been, kind of high up there. Um, I don't know. I would love to do like a big expedition into like the Tasmanian tiger, the thylacine
Ooh.
sightings.
Oh yeah.
Well, now that could be, I mean, that was real. Or
That's what I mean. Like, and
yeah.
for some reason that's kind of like up there. Like, when people usually ask me like, "What's your favorite cryptid?" and I'll be like, "The thylacine," and I'm either hit with, "Oh wow, interesting," or "What the hell is that?" And
Yeah.
it's it. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of why it is such. It's like I have such a like an urge to go look for this thing is
Well,
because like I want it to still exist.
well,
Sure.
but you know what? With some of the experiences, it may very well exist. This might be something that we can really put in a cage. Not that we want to do that, but so many of these things are so elusive. And let's face
Yeah.
it, whatever Bigfoot is, we can't, we can't, we can't find the sumbitch. Sorry I said it,
Yeah.
but we can't. We don't have the body. We don't have, I mean.
The
Uh,
proof.
there definitely seems a certain physicality to it, footprints and so forth. Then you get I'm fascinated by the high strangeness aspects, but man, if we could just get one in a cage for a while, we'll let them go, you know. But yes, that would be great to nail down one of these mysteries, it has been done. I mean, everybody talks about the coelacanth and that sort of thing,
Right.
but
Yeah, I mean, and they're finding, they're finding animals that were said to be extinct alive all
oh
the time. I
sure,
mean, that's kind of what Forrest Galante's whole thing is, finding these animals, and I mean, the whole system of declaring an animal extinct is just like completely wrong, and there's like no actual like scientific approach to it. They're just like, yeah, we haven't seen one in a while. I guess they're gone. You
Oh
know,
my
it's
gosh.
well, like you see these
it's
black cats, Black Panther like critters all over the place. They're as elusive as hell, but I don't believe people are imagining all these things.
that's another one that I've always wanted to do is go to the UK and look at the kind of alien big cats. And I mean, there's definitely something there, and the government's like, nah, there isn't. It's like, yeah, there is. You just don't want to admit that they're there, because you would have to admit that you've known that they've been there, and that's not, that's too hard for you to do. And I've talked to like Andy McGrath and Paul Bastille, and guys, researchers that live there, that are like, yeah, we get reports all the time. Like there people are, they're definitely there. Like it's and these are just animals that aren't supposed to be there, but they're being seen.
Right.
Um,
Um, let's see. I always do this every episode. There's a question that just evaporates, and it's a great question. Hopefully, it'll come back to me. But let's let's talk a little bit about Van Meter. How many festivals have you been to?
I've been to all of them except for the
Oh,
very first.
excellent. Okay. I love the Van Meter Festival. It's not a huge festival at this point, but I have met some of the best people there, and it's just like a city block or so, and because Van Meter's so small, but the history and the enthusiasm about it. What drew you to the festival for starters?
I was actually invited to go by Chad.
Okay.
So it was 2014 was the first festival I went, and I think the very first one was 2013. So I've been to every one except for like the first. Um, so I think we were doing our Lake Pepin episode, and that's kind of how I originally reached out to Chad, because I wanted to
Okay.
get more info, and hopefully set up an interview, which we weren't able to do. Um, and we just kind of continued to talk from that. And then yeah, I think it was like August of 2014, he emailed me and was like, hey, we're doing this festival, if you want to, I'd love to actually meet you, if you want to come down, and this is where it's at. I'm like, screw it, like, what's,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not, what's to lose, like, it's I'm not, I'm not doing anything. So my friend and I went down, and it was a blast. Yeah, we met really great people, and hung out with Chad, and they asked, the people putting on the festival asked if I wanted to be back the following year and actually speak and have a booth, and I was like, yeah, let's do
Yeah.
it. And then I've just gone every year since. Like, it's just kind of been like a yearly tradition. Like, I feel like last year, just it felt weird not going and
Yes.
not going
It's
being at the festival.
it's so disappointing because for the longest time we thought it was going to happen. Brandi, I think the our first festival was 2017, I think,
Oh, sure.
because
I don't
the
remember.
the
It seems like,
Dogman Festival that we did not meet at
yeah, that
was
was
2016,
2016.
right?
That's
So
right.
2017, and
Yeah. Wow.
then 28. I know them by the weather. 2017 was beautiful weather. 2018 was horrible weather,
Yeah, that's right.
and 20
That's right.
and 2019 was mostly good weather. It held
Right.
held off most of the day, which was good enough. But yeah, I
Oh,
just
that's right. I always
yeah.
forgot about 2018. Or just
Oh
rained
Oh
the
my gosh.
whole
God.
time.
And
Yeah.
I know Brandy. Brandi hadn't gotten much sleep that night, and so she's running on empty all day, barely making it through. And but the thing is that the first time we went, it was 2017. We went
Mhm.
the watering hole, which I guess isn't there anymore. Uh, Fat Randy's Bar and Grill.
Yep. Yeah, I think they got in some trouble, and
Yeah, it's too bad
so yeah,
because
there's not even a bar in town
there's
anymore. We
nothing,
have to
man.
go to the one in like DeSoto or whatever where we went the last year.
But
Right.
we went there. Brandy and I were sitting with Kevin Nelson. Chad Lewis was sort of with us, but he was more with uh, Portia. What was it? Jolene
Yes.
and Portia, I think. Rachel
Hmm.
wasn't there
Yep.
that time, and so he was dividing his time a little bit between us. But it was so funny because Kevin and I are talking about all these this commonality we had, these books and things we knew about, and I think we were kind of blowing Brandy's mind, like with all
You were,
this weird.
yeah. So I was just scribbling page after page after page of stuff that they were mentioning that I was going to have to read. I mean, it just for like hours. It just didn't stop.
It was so much fun, and they suggested that the people who were running the bar or restaurant, whatever it is, wanted it was 1:30, and they kind of wanted to close down, so that's when it ended. And I tell you what, I had had so much fun, and I was so bummed that night and that I had to drive home. And then I'll tell you my woes. The GPS kept messing with me because I was going to stay somewhere. And then I said, the hell with it. And so I started home and I went to a rest area to sleep a while. No. Let's see, not that one. But I used the facilities, came back out, very tired, and I tried to get into a car that wasn't mine. It looked like mine in the dark with my bleary eyes, and some guy in the back has got a blanket on him, and he gets up and he's looking at me like, "Were you trying to rob me or something?" I thought, "Oh, sorry, wrong car," and I got the hell out of there faster than man, oh man. So that was the bummer, but it was so much fun, and I encourage anybody. But they've got David Weatherly's going to be there this year, Ken Gerhard, so they have some really big names there. You're speaking
Nash
there.
Hoover.
The Chasing Legends guy is going to be there. I'm going to be speaking about something really strange called the Shaver Mystery, and Zelia Edgar will be speaking there, talking about her title of her talk is "Knit Caps and Coveralls: The Problem of What the entities that we see in UFOs are wearing, the strange paradoxes and the things that don't quite make sense with that." But so anyway, it will, and there's more speakers as well. So I'm really looking forward to it, and it'll be great to see you there.
Yeah, I hope we gotta actually chat in person this time because I it's great. I always see you, and I think I always intend to go and
Yeah,
talk to you,
the
and it
same
just never
here.
happens.
I know it's, but we'll definitely. I'm actually going to have a booth this time, so I've got some. I made a Van Meter visitor poster, which is kind of patterned after the old UFO magazines, and so it's really it's very satirical and a nod to the old magazines, and it has Kevin and Chad as looking like Men in Black, and anyway, you'll see it when I bring it. But so anyway, tell people how they can contact you. Tell them how they can find Chasing Legends and find out all about what you do.
Yeah, so the easiest way is to go to our website, chasinglegendscrew.com. All of our episodes are on there, and then the links to our Facebook, Instagram, YouTube channel are all there. There is a contact form, so if you want to reach out, please do so. If you find me on social media at Nash Hoover, that's where I'm at on Instagram. Shoot me a message if you want to talk about anything crypt related. I don't care. I like talking to people about this stuff. Check out the show. Send me comments if you hate it. Tell me why, so I can make the proper corrections. And if you love it, sweet. Or if you've got any sort of input, I don't care. Just tell us to know. We're constantly wanting to evolve this show and make it the best it can be, and we definitely want to get as much viewer input as we can, because obviously it's you guys at the end of the day are the ones that have to watch it and hopefully enjoy it. we just make it and put it out there.
But my only
Um,
criticism would be less Chad. Less Chad
yeah,
interviews. I hope. For Chad's probably too
he's
busy.
lucky. He's lucky he gets thanked at the end of the episodes.
Well, listen, Nash, thank you so much, and Brandy, it's been great for you to be here. We had kind of a Van Meter mini reunion.
Yes, we did. Thank you again. It's been my honor.
Well, I guess with
Yeah,
that,
I'm excited to get back there. It's gonna be fun. We'll have a booth. Michaela and I will both be there. I think
oh,
Jack might be
great,
coming
that'll be
too.
great.
So yeah, so you'll have a few of the crew down there, and it'll be the first time she's going. She's always meant to come, but this will be the first year that she's actually coming. So she's excited to meet everybody, and it's a really
Uh,
great lineup
uh,
of people. There's gonna be a lot of cool people
it
there.
really, really is. And even if it rains, ladies and gentlemen, the speakers will be in the fire station. At least I hope. So they'll stay
Let's see.
dry
I
one
think
way or the other.
what time
And
do I talk? I think I
it,
talk at like 3:30 or no? What time is it? Where
I
are
think
you?
I'm on.
3:30 I speak, and
I think
Steve, you talk
am I
at,
first?
oh, you open it. Yeah, you
Oh my God, all
12:30.
the pressure. Oh, geez. Uh, okay, just so long as Chad's not in the audience staring at me, that'll be good. But
Well, I shouldn't have to worry about him because he's got to do the bus tour at 3, so he should
oh,
be
you're
out
you're
doing stuff.
you're safe. But no, it's great fun for me. I stayed with good friends on the way on the first night out. Chad's got supposedly got after all this, he may not have lodging for me anymore. But that'll
Well,
be
you
great.
can come stay with me in Des Moines if it comes down to it.
Okay, good deal. Uh, okay, great, great show. Again, thank you, Nash. Thank you, Brandy. And stand by. I'll do my closeout here. The High Strangeness Factor was created by Steve Ward and Andy Mercer. It is copyrighted on the Paranormal UK radio network. I want to thank our fearless leaders, Irene Allen Block and Mark Johnson, here at the network. I also want to thank Andy Mercer in his dual role as producer and regular co-host, and Brian Zeller for composing the High Strangeness Factor theme music. I can be heard weekly as a correspondent on Mac Maloney's Military X-Files, and that can be found on this same network. You can check out my Facebook page called The Phantom Menagerie. And I am Steve Ward, your humble host here on the High Strangeness Factor, a displaced Yank here on the Paranormal UK radio network. Thank you for listening. I will see you all again in a fortnight. Take care.